Welcome back, everybody, to the Modern Moms Roadmap to Balance podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Nettleton, and today my guest is Rebecca Smith. Dr. Rebecca is a clinical psychologist who specializes in anxiety and perfectionism. She's a mom of 2 kiddos and loves that as much as she loves being an entrepreneur and building her private practice. She lives in New Orleans and is licensed in Louisiana and Virginia. In those moments, she's not working or momming. She loves reading romance novels or watching Murder, She Wrote with her husband.
We're very cool, Kayla.
Well, thank you for joining us, Rebecca.
Thank
What
you.
is Murder, She Wrote? Is that an old,
Yes.
TV soap opera?
It wasn't daytime. It's like 80s
Okay.
and 90s, like little old lady
Okay.
solved murders. We're getting really good at being within 5 minutes. We're like, he's going to die. It's going to be her. She did it. Like,
Oh my gosh. Where are you watching this on?
Peacock. It's the only reason we have
Oh,
Peacock.
wow.
We were like, oh my God, it's just so chill. But our kids are 5 and 2. And so we started shortening it. And we were like, hey, you want to watch a murder? And then we're like, we can't say that around the kids now. No, Murder, She Wrote is a show.
How funny. Yes. That's hilarious. They're like, what?
Like, Mom, what does that word mean? I'm like, we're not talking about that word yet, guys.
Yeah. So with the question that I asked everybody, what is your definition of a balanced life?
I mean, you like don't pull any punches when you're starting. That's like a really hard question, right?
No, get in there, get everybody's definition.
Exactly. Yeah.
No,
I feel like
funny business, right to the question.
I feel like it's such a good question though, because I feel like it is different for everybody. And I think that my personal answer has to do with like, oh, if I get this amount of me time, or if I can figure out how to feel like me when I'm doing all this other stuff. So for me, that might be like reading while watching my kids or something and playing with them. And then also having time to say like, mommy likes to read a book. I'm going to read a book now. But when I'm talking to my patients, I'd like to have a broader answer because that could be different for a lot of people. And to me, I think that working moms are juggling a lot.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of balls in the air. And the metaphor that I like to use when I think about balance is imagining for yourself which of these balls are glass and which are rubber, because a bunch of them are going to fall. And if you're feeling like you can live towards a balanced life, you have to know that the self-care one is actually glass. Like that one feels like the first one that you can drop. It feels like taking care of yourself it can wait so you can get to all the other things you're doing. But treating that one like glass and knowing that the dishes or the meeting that doesn't really matter, actually, we can maybe make an email.
Yeah.
Treating those ones more like ones that you are allowed to drop, if that makes sense. I don't know. What do you think, Kayla? Does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah, no, it makes absolute sense. And yesterday, okay, so we're recording this like very early October and this might not come out. So if you're going back and like looking at my Instagram, it might not be the one that I did yesterday, but on
October 1st.
I had just thrown up an Instagram post and one of the things that I had put was self-care is not a luxury. Because I think a lot of us do think of self-care as a luxury. And sure, getting your nails done and getting your hair done is a luxury. But that's not the only way that you can engage in self-care. And Rebecca, you just talked about like self-care for you is being able to read a book. So it's really about incorporating many different things, many different ways that you can feel like you're getting that self-care in. It doesn't have to be just this one thing where you're spending money. But yeah, I think it makes absolute sense that sometimes we can drop one of those rubber balls to save the glass one.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that it is true. You know, for me, reading a book, baking, I really love baking. I think that one of the answers to what self-care can be is what makes you feel like you.
Yeah.
And I think that like as a mom and as an entrepreneur, as a working mom, whatever that is, you're wearing a lot of different hats. And it's rare to wear that hat that's like, I have felt like this self since day one. This is the same 12-year-old self also wanted to read, the same 20-year-old self. And now the 30s, I can't remember how old I am, 37, something like that. The 37-year-old self is the same. And that's what makes me feel like me in the midst of the momming.
Yeah. And I really love that you said that in terms of looking at self-care as engaging in an activity that makes you feel like you, especially as moms. There's a lot of times where forget we forget what we loved because we're no longer engaging in it. We forget that feeling of who it is to be truly ourselves because we've been just so into the role as mom that we don't allow ourselves time or space to be who it is you are, to be Kayla or to be Rebecca.
Yeah. Yeah, and noticing too, I think that there are times you might get pushback, right? Your partner wants you to be the partner, your kids want you to be the mom. And I think it is said now more often, but it bears repeating. Like, it's good for your kids to see you do something that makes you happy. And it's as simple as sitting and reading a book, or like, if they're coloring, you can do a coloring page too, just because you like it and you don't have to
Oh
do
yeah.
theirs. And you don't have to give it to them. You can keep it. Like,
Yes. You can have your own special crayons or color pencils. I just
yeah.
bought some for myself, and my daughter was like, "Mommy, can I use your color pencils? Yours that you just bought?" I'm like, "No, baby, those
Oh,
are mommy's color pencils.
those
I
are
will color
mommies.
with you. You can use your crayons, but these are just for mommy." But
Yeah.
why? I want to be able to color in the lines. Okay, well, let's go find your color pencils.
You can have those. I actually remember my mom was a doctor. She's a neurologist. And I remember how much she had to do this balance too. And it's so bizarre, but I have this really vivid memory. She's a neurologist, and she had really good relationships with her patients, and they would often like bring her little gifts, or they would go on a trip, they would bring her back something. And every single time I was like, is that mine? I want it. And so much of the time she would give it to me. And I remember the one
Okay.
time, the very first time, she was like, actually, this one is for me. And I was like, shocked.
I'm like, what?
I had this vivid memory of thinking like, "Oh my god, you are a whole person who
Mhm.
has her own things?" And that really stuck with me, realizing that was really powerful for kid Becky, and wanting my kids to feel so loved and cherished, and I can be generous with them, but I also am a whole person, was something that's
Oh
really
yeah.
stuck in my head.
Yes. So I love food. I love really good food. And my husband makes fun of me and he'll be like, "You're just so fancy. You just like all of the fancy stuff." And I'm not gonna lie, like I do like fancy food.
Yeah.
So sure, I like vanilla and chocolate ice cream. But there is this one. So if you're in Texas and listening to this, you will be able to find it because it's HEB brand Swoon by HEB, and it's the
Ooh.
Cookie Lovers ice cream. And it's my favorite. It has chocolate and white chocolate ice cream, and then it has the different cookies. So like Oreo, it might not be Oreo, right? Not Oreo brand. A black and white cookie.
Oh,
Yeah. And then there's a
mhm.
cookie dough. And then there's this fudge stuff inside, and it is my favorite ice cream. I will not share. I'm not going to share that
No,
ice cream. But if I'm
ma.
getting it for myself, I'm going to buy my kids like maybe like popsicles because I know they're going to ask. But I have another option for them. And my kids will be like, "But what's that one?" I'm like, "That one is a mommy's. These are for
That one is
you."
yes. Oh my gosh, I saw some video or something, and the mom was trying to say like, "You can't." It was ice cream, and she's like, "It's spicy. You can't have it. It's something. You can't have it." And as funny as that is, and I've probably employed that once or twice. There is also something actually valuable about saying like, "It's just not yours. I love you,
Yes.
sweet pea. I will give you the world, but I will not give you this bite of ice cream."
Yeah, I'm not gonna give you my favorite, like, what is it? Salted caramel chocolate chip cookie. No, this is for me because
And
I know you're not gonna really like it anyways, but I'm not telling you that. These are for you. These are the
exactly.
cookies for you. And this is teaching them boundaries. This is
Yeah.
teaching them organic boundaries without it being like I feel like whenever people are talking about or thinking about boundaries, it's like this is the boundary, like they're using that word, and that's not
Yeah.
necessarily how it has to be done. Sure, sometimes you do have to be very clear, like, this is my boundary. I love you, but I am not willing to do this right now, or I don't like you talking to me in this way. So we're going to have to pause. Sure, there's times for that. But this is mommy's ice cream and this is yours. That's also a boundary. And that's
Yeah.
teaching your kids. Like sometimes they're not going to get what you have because that's yours and that's okay.
Right. And without shaming, right? And even between them, right? I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And so similarly, brother wants whatever thing and it's like,
Mhm.
do you want to share that? You don't have to. And sometimes they do want to share it and sometimes they don't. Then we kind of deal with the tears, but I think that it's actually kind of getting in like underneath some of this cool stuff where the real self-care is boundaries. The real self-care is feeling protected. The real
Yeah.
self-care is feeling like you're allowed to be safe within your boundaries.
Mhm.
I think that that's really huge. And as silly as it sounds, like those teaching moments are often about ice cream or colored pencils
Oh,
or
yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the easy moments because if we're waiting for the tougher stuff, it's going to be so much harder. If
Oh,
we're
yeah.
just willing to give in, or it's just easier to give them the things that are mine because then I don't have to deal with this tantrum. If we're not working with it now, it's going to be so much harder when we get to like the actual big stuff. Like
Yeah.
maybe the stuff that they can watch rated R versus PG-13, or when they're starting to drive and being able to go to this friend's house or not that friend's house.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And then too, there's the additional benefit of like, it's so cliche, but it's so true. If you feel good, you can be a better parent, you can be a better self. There is more balance, right? That
Oh yeah.
balance, kind of getting back to that. One of my favorite pieces of parenting advice is make sure mommy has a snack. Like, yes, because if mommy has a
Yeah.
snack, then she has enough energy to make sure everybody else has a snack.
Yes, that's so true. Sometimes my husband and we try and make snacks easy. So one of the things that we would eat as a snack was yogurt, but I wouldn't always have time to sit down and eat a yogurt, but I knew I needed a snack. So we found these like they're basically like the Danimals. Does everyone know what a Danimal is? It's like those yogurt smoothies for kids. It's
Yes.
basically like that, but for an adult, and it has 23 grams of protein. So if you're counting protein, like it's an excellent source from
Nice.
a quick drink. So it's like this yogurt smoothie. I think it's Oikos brand. You don't have to just find it at HEB.
You're like, if you're not in Texas, you're allowed to have
Yes.
this treat.
You can find this one. And so it was like a game changer. It's still yogurt. I'm still getting my snack and I like it better. I like the taste better than the
Yeah.
yogurt we were buying anyways. So I was like, can you buy these at the grocery store from now on? Because at the time he was going to the grocery store. He was in charge of the groceries. So I'm like, I need you to buy these and not those.
First of all, yes. Love that. Secondly, that you just said something that made me think about balance too. And I think that this is not always available. Not all moms. I'm sure there are many single moms who are listening to this podcast. But I also think that if you are able to share the load, like how you said, oh, he was doing the groceries at that time, which is like, you can do the groceries, he can do whatever, it doesn't matter who, but having that set line of like, this is who does this and this is who does that, I think can also genuinely provide a lot of balance. Not only the fact that it's shared, but the fact that it's so distinct and set, and this is what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, in that, if you're listening, like think about all of the things you do, not in to throw it in your partner's face or anything, but sometimes we forget all that we're doing because we've just gotten so used to it that we're not thinking about it. So, kind of taking an inventory of what are all of the things that I'm doing that I'm in charge of. And if you're
Right.
struggling with energy, that might be a good place to start. And can you hand some of that stuff off? Can some of this stuff go to your kids? Like, are you packing their lunches
Oh,
or are you doing their laundry? Is this an age appropriate chore that they can
yeah.
start doing? Yes, it's going to be some extra work on the front end, but if you can get rid of this in the long run, it's going to be so much better for you. So thinking about stuff like that.
Yeah. Have you heard of what's it called? It's the division. Oh,
Oh, fair play.
yes. I was like, could you please read my mind about this thing?
Yes, fair. When you said the division of labor, I'm like, okay, she must be talking about fair play. Yes,
Yes.
fair play by Eve Brodsky. Yes, I'm very familiar with that book.
Gold, right? There's a little, it's not a game, it is cards. There are cards, but to like,
Yes.
figure out who's doing what chore. There's a book, there's actually a Netflix show, highly recommend.
Did
But
you watch the show?
I haven't watched it. I have a few patients who have watched it, and for them, it really drove home the whole like, wow, when it's
Mm.
not balanced, it is really easy to notice from the
The
outside.
only reason I ask is because I, at the time, I saw it on Hulu. And so I watched it, but it was after I read the book and I was very underwhelmed. But I think if
Oh,
you maybe start with
interesting.
it, it would
Yeah,
probably better. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, and I'm coming at this as a therapist and not
I was
just
like, you're a shrink,
a
Kayla.
person.
You
Not a
have
person that's like outside the field.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that if you are not in the field, it's a little bit more impactful. And if you are in the field, you're like, duh, yes. But like
Yeah.
absolutely, for sure. There's this other piece of it that you're saying, you're like talking about, can you give your kid this task?
Hmm.
Which I'm all for that. That's so great. But it brings into mind something that I think about a lot, which is perfectionism and the idea of like, can I delegate? Wouldn't it be nice if I delegated? Can I manage my own discomfort in having tasks done differently and maybe not perfectly to allow myself that time, right? And that's not just my kid doesn't do it well enough. Like that really is like, where is my perfectionism making it
Yeah.
so I am not okay?
Yes. That was something that I struggled with too, in terms of I want things to be a certain way or in a certain place.
Hmm.
But again, it took some time and some work to be able to really sit in that discomfort of it doesn't have to be this way. Everything's still going to be okay. Everything's going to look fine.
Yeah.
It's okay if it's not perfect, because yes, I identify as someone who's a perfectionist. I definitely do. But it's looking at like, is my perfectionism helping me or is it working against me at this point?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that the hard piece with perfectionism is that I would say more than half the time, it's in that painful place,
Hmm.
right? Because if we go back to the definition, we're thinking about trying to attain perfection. And so we're literally chasing something that is not possible.
Yeah.
And we're setting ourselves up for pain and failure. And then when I talk about it with my patients, I call it anxious perfectionism to kind of
Mm.
add this like, I get that you're specific and I get that you're meticulous, but you're in pain, girly, and
Yeah.
it doesn't feel good. And that anxiety with the perfectionism is, I think, really important. And noticing like you said, sit with the discomfort or soothe the discomfort. How do I appropriately self-soothe so that I can allow a little bit of flexibility in my space and then allow
Mhm.
more self-care, positive stuff, at balance for myself?
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's usually something underneath. So, for example, this comes up for me sometimes in terms of whatever my son chooses to wear. My immediate thought sometimes is like, that's what you're wearing. I
What?
am not saying this out loud. I
Exactly.
am
No.
saying this in my head. Like, ooh, I've come to realize this is bringing up stuff for me in my own. What are people going to think of me if I'm wearing this? He is totally fine in his athletic wear. I have nothing against people who wear athletic wear. I love wearing athletic wear, but he wears soccer jerseys and all the time. He's totally into soccer and good for him. But in my mind, I'm like, I can't, like, how do you wear soccer jerseys all the time? Not only just soccer jerseys, but like his soccer jerseys. This is not like professional soccer jerseys, like his soccer league, like the
Yes.
hometown stuff.
Team
And
blue.
I'm like, "You're- how? But he's just like, this is what he loves. He's very comfortable and that's what he likes. So this is my own stuff coming up. This is nothing to do with
Right.
him. He is
Yeah.
good in what
No.
he's wearing. If he wants to change that, that's fine with him. But why am I going to put those shame thoughts on him that are mine?
Right? I think you're so right. A lot of what I'm hearing you say is I'm imagining myself wearing the team blue soccer jersey and not being able to stand the looks that I'm getting in the grocery store, right? But there's this other layer of, I would say, especially our partner and our children, a little to some extent, like other family members or friends, but particularly our partners and our children are kind of like our proxies in the world,
Mhm.
right? And so they represent us. And it goes back and forth, right? And so it's a little bit, oh man, if I were him, I would be embarrassed to wear that soccer jersey.
Mhm,
But there's
mhm.
another thing in your brain potentially for, I think for a lot of us, I know this comes up for me, where it's like, are people going to think, what kind of mom let him wear that? Right? Like, oh, if my proxy, my kid or my partner is out there doing something, how does that actually reflect on me,
Mhm,
on Rebecca,
mhm.
on
Yeah.
Kayla, not just on them? And realizing like allowing them to have their own personhood and express that even if it would be different
Yeah.
from us is such an act of trust with your kids and like strength in yourself that like they can be different from you and it's okay.
Oh, yeah, and I would absolutely agree, like, that's also part of where it stemmed from. It was, what kind of mother will people think I am? I've
Yeah.
done tons of work on that myself, and I that like, that doesn't even pop in my mind anymore as much, right? Like, sometimes
Yeah.
never, like, fully get rid of something. Sometimes it will come up, and I'm just like, "You know, it's fine, I don't care." Like, if my son is a very hot-natured person, so he's often the kid running around with no jacket on, and it's like 40, 50 degrees, and people are like, "Where's his jacket?" Like, he's fine. If he needs his jacket, he's gonna come tell us.
Yes, you're like, "I'm not torturing my child.
Yeah.
If you wanna try to wrestle him into this, fine, but, like, I think you
Oh,
should."
yes, yes. And that's another thing too, is I will sometimes think like, "Is this worth the fight? Is this worth the struggle?"
Oh my
And a lot
god.
of the times,
Probably
because
not.
I'll ask myself this, the answer is no.
No,
This is not worth it.
no. Well,
Yeah.
not only is it not worth it, and maybe this is, like, we're 2 therapists talking, and so we're gonna get, like, deep into it here, but there's this full circle moment that might take me a minute to explain, but if we tell him that he doesn't know what he needs, "I know what you need. You need a
Mhm.
jacket." And then that piece of it undermines building self trust, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if we're saying, okay, fine, I'm freezing, but you figure out your own body, I trust you to come tell me what you need. We go back to this like full circle moment of fast forwarding to how can he possibly find balance if he's not really good at checking in with himself and doing that self trust
Mhm.
piece and knowing what he needs and believing that what he needs is okay,
Yes.
right? It's
Yeah.
like actually all connected there.
No, for real. And that is so on point. Even from like my own childhood, as an adult, I struggled with like, what is it that I want? What is it that I want to do for me? What is it that I need? Because as a child, and my mom and I have had conversation about this, it was do as I say. There was no explanation. It was the because I said so.
Because I said so.
Yes, and when we just tell our child to do something because we said so, they're
Right.
never gonna learn to trust themselves, to recognize their own needs. And yes, there are circumstances where they absolutely have to have their jacket or it's unsafe, like in
Yeah.
negative degree weather, but that is something that you can talk about.
Yeah.
But when it's like 50 degrees or 60 degrees and they don't wanna wear their sweater or their jacket, they're not going to die. Like, they're not gonna get
Right.
frostbite, it's gonna be okay.
Absolutely, for sure. What you're saying about your childhood too reminds me of the only reason when my mom said, "No, this gift is for me. I'm not giving it to you."
Mhm,
The reason it stuck in my head was because I was old enough to remember that. She had
mm,
never said that until I don't know, I must have been like 8 or 9. Literally, that was the first time when I was like, "Wow." And so I don't know, I'm thinking of what you're talking about this, like, I told because I said so or whatever it is, and noticing that when there's a shift when it is time for me to trust myself, when it is time for mom to have her own needs and keep her own stuff or whatever it is, it does really impact us. There's also movement. There's time to shift how you're doing it, right? Let's
yeah,
say your jacket, if it's below 65 kind of mom, and you're trying to let go of that, like that is such a cool moment to not only decide, you know what, I can be flexible, I can change my mind, and I can also tell my kid why I decided, you know what,
mm,
kiddo, I really realized that I trust you And I trust that you're going to tell me when. And so let me know. I have it here. Let me know, right? You can make that decision and have those moments that shift things. And I think that they can be really meaningful.
Yeah. And when you're having that, you can also say, we're going to grab your jacket just in case. So we have it if you do decide that you are cold later on.
Yep.
Because then
Yeah.
that's teaching them. If we just, as moms, grab their jacket and do all that for them, they're not learning that other piece. We have to teach them the thinking.
Yes.
All
Oh
of
my
this
gosh.
is a skill.
It's like it's the sports casting, right? You know, when they were little and they're
Oh,
still learning how to talk, and so you're like, you put the doll on the bed,
uh-huh.
right? You're just like, this is what's happening, right? And it doesn't actually ever end. We're all like, okay, I'm going to verbalize what's going through my head right now.
Yes.
I am packing this because I think that the temperature is going to get down, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. Yes. Funny. That's so true. There's this woman I follow on social media, and I can never remember what her account is, but I'll link it in the show notes. But her whole thing is about being able to teach children how to observe and find what needs to be done and be able to do it, because that's a learned skill, which usually
Yeah.
it's women who are taught that, or we teach it to ourselves because we're trying to make other people feel better or not get in trouble. So those are things that we learn.
Being codependent, people pleasing,
Yes.
stop the like yelling before it starts, whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's usually women and girls who learn that skill and not men and boys.
Yeah.
So she's trying to help parents teach their kids how to scan and notice what might need to get done around the house. And it's not all just on mom to be able to do this. And there was this game she shared that someone had shared with her, and it was like the notice game. So all the kids have to notice something that needs to get done. So parent can do this. They write it on like a little note, and they're going to see if the kids can guess what needs to get done or what needs to get picked up around the house or what needs to be cleaned up. And if the kids can guess, then they win, and then they get to be the seeker who
Like the I Spy of
write it
like,
down.
oh my
Yes.
gosh,
Like, oh, that's so
that
fun. Like that
can
would be so,
be,
yes.
yeah.
And she was like, sure, you can give them a prize if you want, but we don't want them to be doing this just so they can get a prize.
Yeah, we do it because we're in the community of the household, because we want to live in a nice place. Like we want
Mhm.
it to be nice here, and we all contribute. That is so cool. I'm stealing that so hard. I
I know.
cannot wait
I
till
need
you
to.
link that. Yes.
I'm like waiting for the weekend because I'm not about to do this on the weekday. I'm waiting for the weekend to do this and see like how my kids take to it. Because I have a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 9-year-old. The 2-year-old's going to be 3 in January, so he could probably understand. But at least the 4 and 9-year-old, I think, would enjoy it.
Absolutely. Oh, you could do teams. You could do kids against parents too.
Oh, yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah. Then the 4-year-old's probably like a little kind of into it, but the 9-year-old's like, got it. They know how to write it.
Yeah.
So like, okay, it's y'all's team now. What are we doing? And I love that.
Oh, I like that too. Back to the, is this worth the fight? There's even times when and this happened this week, I set my son in the shirt that he was wearing to daycare the day before because he would not let me take it off. Like he would not let me take off the shirt, or they'll go in their pajamas because they would not let me take it off. And so I was like, okay, fine, we'll go like this. And then I tell the daycare, there is extra clothes in his backpack. Feel free to change them if you want. I do know that he is wearing the same clothes as yesterday, but there's clean ones if he'll let you change it.
If you figure out how. Yeah.
Yes, but it's all with whatever you're comfortable with. No, not every mom has to do this. But when I'm asking myself, is this worth the fight? It
Right.
just takes so much pressure off because most of the time for me, it's no, it's not worth it.
Well, I mean, kids have a bunch of different temperaments. I know even between the two of mine, they're very different. But I do think to some extent that's just such a human question, even for a 2-year-old, right? And the answer for a 2-year-old is usually, yes, this is worth the fight.
I am dying on the hill of wearing the same shirt.
Exactly. I will die on this hill. I will not change this shirt. And like you said, if it's negative, whatever, just below 0, there are times when we have to be in the fight, but there are also times when you're like, you know what, kid, you win. And not a you win of like, that means I lose, but like, I realize this is important to you. I don't understand why it is. And you can't really 100% tell
Yeah.
me why, but we're going to go with that today. And I think that there's something really valuable in that for sure.
Oh
Because
yeah.
they'll die
No,
on
there
that.
is. Yes. Because this is probably going to be the child who I'm going to have to also fight to take a shower when he gets a little bit older. Because my oldest is already like that. He does not want to take a shower. And
Oh
I
my
mean, we're at
God.
like, okay, you have to at least take a shower after soccer practice. And so
That
he's like,
is
okay. But for
okay.
him, it's like obvious because he's sweating and like covered in dirt. But if it's not a day where he's sweating and covered in dirt, it's a little bit
I don't
harder.
get it.
But why? I don't understand.
It seems fine. I think I smell fine. Like,
Yeah.
bless you,
Yeah,
little
we haven't
sister.
hit the smelly part yet, but I know we will. We will have some trouble
It's
there.
coming. It's coming.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know we're about out of time, but I've really enjoyed this conversation and I hope everyone else has. This was really just talking about what came up for us and our own
I
experience.
know. It went so
But thank
fast.
you. I know it does. It goes by super fast. So tell the audience a little bit more about you if they are wanting to get connected with you. What is the best way to do that?
Sure, absolutely. I'm not on a ton of social media, but I do have a YouTube channel that is very new. Please be kind. I'm not very good at it yet. It is at Rebecca A.E. Smith, PhD. We'll link it in the show notes. And I have a blog on my therapy website as well, and we'll link that too. But I mostly talk about perfectionism and anxiety. I mostly work with high achieving women, usually professional women, not necessarily always. But overall, the people I work with are dealing with perfectionism and anxiety. And we're in that space of realizing that it feels like perfectionism and anxiety got us where we are. And it feels scary to let it go,
Yeah.
right? It made me a doctor. It made me a lawyer. It put me in this position and it's not helping anymore. And honestly, there was going to be a better way to get there anyway. So, how do we keep that fire and keep the success and keep the ambition and make it less painful, decrease the perfectionism, decrease the anxiety? So, that's
Oh
what
my
most
gosh,
of my
yeah.
stuff is about.
And even just that, like we could probably continue talking for a whole nother
I
hour
know.
of how I think a lot of perfectionist women who enter into motherhood, you have their like mind or life kind of blown up, like
Yeah.
baby blows up the life because everything that they had been doing is no longer working for them now that they're a mom and having to care for another human being.
And even just the little things of like, your schedule is not your own. Do you have weird random hours where they're sleeping? Yes. Do you get to pick when those hours are? You do not.
No. Yeah.
Um, and also just having this like massive hormonal shift, this massive neurocognitive shift, this
Mhm.
massive shift in priorities and trying to find yourself. And, you know, I think that's why I don't think my answer about self care would have been the same before I was a mom.
Yeah.
Before I was a mom, I was in grad school. I had my own business. There was a lot that I was doing, but there were so many hours of my life that I could be myself. And when you become a mom, whether you're working or not, those hours dwindle to like next to nothing. And you need to figure out how to add that back in. And so figuring out how to be yourself again
Mhm.
is so huge. And being perfectionistic about what that self is going to be is not going to get you very far.
Yeah. Yeah. But we have to leave it there, unfortunately, because
We
we
can
are
do
out of
it
time.
again.
I
Yeah.
know. But thank you so much, Rebecca, for giving us your time today and chatting with us.
Oh my gosh, Kayla, I had so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.